The fundamental problem about Hong Kong is that it was a British colony for 156 years. That's a long time. It means many generations of Hong Kong citizens lived under British rule. It means that during this period, by and large, Hong Kong was very estranged from China and extremely ignorant about China. I mean, I did debate in London 3 or 4 years ago with Anson Chan, who was the secretary, head of the civil service to Chris Patten when he was governor of Hong Kong. And I was shocked by her level of ignorance about China. Hong Kong is a Western-style society with Western ways of thinking and Western values. And you do not change that situation quickly. I mean, to be quite frank about it, even 50 years won't change many of those attitudes because they are deeply laid in the consciousness of the way in which Hong Kong people think. Now, it's certainly true that the West has played a negative role in the period since the big extradition bill by basically serving, I think, as a cheerleader for those who opposed the Hong Kong government and opposed the Chinese government on Hong Kong. But I would urge you not to think the major cause of the problems in Hong Kong today essentially because of the Western role in the current situation. Because I think if you think that, you'll be looking in the wrong direction and not doing what we all need to do, which is to try and understand what's happening and therefore find a way of being able to deal with this successfully. The Hong Kong government has made 2 serious mistakes in this period. The first was the security law in 2003, which it withdrew after huge demonstrations. And the second big mistake was the introduction of the extradition bill recently, which, of course, also has been more or less withdrawn. Why were these mistakes? Look, there's a good case for the security bill. There's a very good case for the extradition bill. I do not deny that. Unfortunately, these both were a step too far for too many in Hong Kong. Now, there's no denying, in my view, that the big demonstration against the extradition bill represented a very big cross-section of Hong Kong society. And the problem is that then it gave encouragement to another position in Hong Kong society. And the different position is they want universal suffrage, and a section of them want independence for Hong Kong. And they are pursuing their objectives in a violent way which no government in an advanced country can tolerate. This is inexcusable. And I think one of the great tasks here is to find the ways to isolate these sections and move Hong Kong opinion away from that position. I mean, I really don't think these young, excuse the expression, kids represent the mainstream of Hong Kong opinion. I think it would be quite wrong for us to think in these terms. Now, this brings me to the deeper questions. I think that there's a feeling of displacement. Over in 1997, the Hong Kong economy was roughly 1/3 of the size of the Chinese economy. Today, it is less than 3% of the size of the Chinese economy. In other words, there's been an extraordinary shift in the center of gravity away from Hong Kong towards China. And it is stark, actually, for Hong Kong because perhaps the best exemplar of this transformation in China is just over the border in Shenzhen, which in 1978 was just a fishing village. And Hong Kong was much richer and riding high and all the rest of it. And today, it's complete role reversal. Shenzhen is perhaps the most remarkable city in the world. In some ways, the most advanced city in the world. And what's happened to Hong Kong? I would suggest that by and large, the difficulty is that Hong Kong is relatively stuck. It did have a role, but it feels in many senses as if it's lost that role. So I think that if you want to understand the mentality of Hong Kong people at the moment, you've got to take into account all these kind of considerations. They feel, they're angry, they're frustrated, don't know where they're going. You've got a Hong Kong economy which is relatively stagnant, which has been unable to reinvent itself, and for certain sections of the population, conditions have got worse. Young people cannot ever afford, or vast majority can never afford to have property. So they feel embittered by this, and they feel that there isn't much of a future in that situation. If you think about China, what has transformed China over the last 40 years? Reform and opening up. That is the reason that China's been transformed. A remarkable vision, starting with Deng Xiaoping, with a constantly rolling process. One of the wonderful things I think about reform and opening up is there's no end point. It keeps developing. And for Hong Kong, well, frankly, I don't know what the reform strategy is in relationship to Hong Kong. I don't really think there is one in the same way that there has been in China. But I think the most important single question for the Hong Kong government is a strategy of transformation of the socio-economic conditions in Hong Kong to give the people a sense of the future. I want to finish with 2 points. First of all, I want to congratulate the Chinese government and the Chinese people on their restraint in relationship to this question. And my very last point is this. It's so obvious that Hong Kong's future is as part of China. I mean, what else can it be? I mean, these kids are kind of out of their minds. Independent Hong Kong? Well, all your trade, everything is linked so profoundly to China. What are you going to do in that situation? Look west? Look back to Britain? Britain's going through its biggest political and constitutional crisis for 200 years. I asked them, which planet are you living in? What do you think you're doing? China is the future for Hong Kong.